Hey everyone, and welcome to a special edition of Cannabis Capitol's Pop Politics. I'm your host, Chris Egger, and I'm here tonight to gather with members of the industry, thought leaders, and people who have really paid some dues in the legislative field on cannabis issues. With that being said, I'm going to ask each one of them to introduce themselves, and I'm going to tell you, this is a show about common ground. So the reason we've gathered here tonight is to bring a common perspective to what this industry faces challenges-wise. And of course, we have an election in June 7th, and we have another one that's coming November, where there's going to be a lot of legislation and things going on between now and then that really affect not only the cannabis industry and the professionals in the industry, but also the cannabis consumer, who I will say is a cannabis voter. And that's one of the reasons this panel has agreed to be here tonight. And I'm so grateful to have such experienced and talented professionals from what I consider to be a best practice industry, which is the cannabis industry here in California. So I'm going to start with my left, and I'm going to ask this professional here to introduce herself, tell you a little bit about what she does and how she has gotten her experience in the cannabis industry, and we're going to do that down the panel line.
Thank you very much.
Are you on?
Can you hear me? Perfect. All right, my name is Jakki Hernandez. I am a Deputy Chair of Orange County NORML. If nobody is familiar with NORML, that is the national organization that reforms marijuana laws, and we are from the Orange County chapter. I'm actually here with Candace Hawes, who's also the founder of Orange County NORML, founded 19 years ago this year, which is pretty incredible. So woo to that, yes. First and foremost, I am an advocate and an activist, advocate for the people, the consumers, and an activist for this movement. There's a lot of laws that still need to be changed and a lot of modification to laws that exist, kind of why I'm here. What I do in the business side is I am the Director of Compliance for MNG Enterprise. It's a vertical integration in the cannabis industry. Vertical means that they basically have every operation. I do compliance for each of the operations. I do compliance for 5 of their retails, their manufacturing, distro, cultivation. It's a whole bunch of laws, local jurisdiction laws, state laws, OSHA laws, ADA laws, all the non-fun stuff I get to wag my finger at. I also have to do compliance for the labels for the products that we do manufacture. So when you think about compliance in cannabis land, and when you go to the dispensaries and you buy the products and how crazy the packages are, and we can argue how bad it is for our environment, there's a lot of regulations that make them that complicated. So it could be a lot easier, we could be a lot more sustainable, and the fact that we have to comply with all of these laws, it makes it impossible to have small packaging. So one of the things that's actually on the representatives' desks right now is something that's going to be making the package labels even more regulated. They're actually going to add more warnings, and it's something similar to if anybody's traveled out of the country and seen a box or a pack of cigarettes, and they have pictures of, dead fetuses and dirty lungs, and they scare you with visuals. And that's kind of what it seems like it's going to be going to. They want you to have 12 specific warnings that are constantly rotating. Even on, if we have advertisements on digital billboards, they want the warning labels to be more prominent than even the brand's name.
So politics plays a role. It's not just taxes,
no,
and it's not just local access.
Yeah.
And these are big topics that I think we're going to talk about tonight, but you just hit on something that I think is going to be an interesting topic to get into a little bit on the compliance side. And so to your left, Jakki, who do we have?
Craig Wasserman, big brother of the Pop Brothers at Law. I've been practicing law, been an attorney 35 years. 25 of those, the last 25 of those years have been in the cannabis space, literally from the ground up, working with growers, manufacturers, back in the day when they were called extract artists, blasting in our backyards. Safely, I might add, because really, when you saw those honey oil labs blow up in the day, it really, if you take how many actually happened and how many people were doing it, believe it or not, people were doing it pretty safely for the most part back in the day. So my brother and I practice criminal law, and we also I do all the regulatory permitting, filing, licensing, legal compliance. Like Jakki, usually I'm lucky because they do all the groundwork, and then as general counsel, I'll get sent the final package going, is this right? And then I get to look at all those regulations and the font size. I tell them I'm not dealing with font size. You guys, if you can't measure, that's on you. I'm not gonna go measure that shit because that's not my job. And so we practice a lot on that side, and then of course we do criminal defense, any kind of criminal defense, but we specialize in cannabis cases as well. And I can only ditto what Jakki has said. With using our platform, I mean, when I was asked to be on politics, it's an oxymoron. They don't belong together. They shouldn't belong together. Unfortunately, I'm a minority voice in that feeling, and I think actually I'm not, but I'm the only vocal one. That's why I get on a soapbox, and I won't get on it too hard of how everybody listening, everybody out there who's watching, you've got to get active in your community. It's the only way it's going to change. In California, we have 470 something, I don't know the exact number, my brother always knows that number, but there's 482 cities and 58 counties, and still less than a third of the cities in the state of California allow cannabis activity.
Right. And by the way, local access, I think...
Local access has got to change, and hopefully the local access will change. We had on our podcast today gentlemen that are putting forth a ballot, hopefully in 2024, that's going to basically take away local control, and it's going to be controlled at the state level. Get rid of the 15, drop it down to 5, even though I argued against 5. But it's people trying to get that common ground. That's why I'm not a politician, because I'm not going to agree to something that's just not right. Okay, so we'll do 5%. Why 5%? Why? The amount of sales and use tax and all the regular taxes we have will more than quadruple with, opening up the market and letting people go to retail stores where they don't have to pay in excess of 50% tax.
Right. And by the way, Craig, this is exactly where I thought we were going to dip into the first part of our show.
So I'm sorry.
No. Let's do this. Let's come back to really quick. Let's go to your left. No, let's go to your left really quick and make sure that we get our final introduction out of the way, and then we're going to dive right into this.
Hello, my name is Pam Chotiswatdi, and I am honored to be on this stage with a fellow activist here. I am new to the activist voice. I've been quiet pretty much my whole life. Professionally, I am a director of education for the LBCA, which is the Long Beach Collective Association. They established in 2010, doing regulations in Long Beach and organizing and educating there. So, yeah.
And thank you. So, one of the things, Pam, the LBCA has been really effective, but, Craig touched on it, and I think we need to dive right into it. Right now, Gavin Newsom from the executive branch office has introduced an idea about eliminating the cultivation tax and potentially raising the excise tax in the future. There's legislative agendas that are currently going through the halls of both the Assembly and the Senate. I know that Senator Bradford's 1281 made it from the Senate vote into the Assembly now, right? And that's something I'd like to get into talking about specifically. But give us a dive into this, because I think for me, we've talked about this, and I think, was it Sean Kiernan that was on today from the Weed for Warriors?
Yes.
And the California Cannabis Reform Initiative?
Yes, sir.
I'm a huge proponent of the concept.
Yes.
The common ground there is to align everyone in the industry and also the culture and the voting culture, right, to achieve something meaningful. Because at AUMA, it was a watershed moment, it was a breakthrough moment, but it also left a lot to be desired 5 years down the road. But hindsight was 2020, and I think the exuberance of that moment. But Sean was an active opponent of the AUMA Prop 64, and I think that his voice is extremely relevant in the current dialogue. But I'd like to hear from you, Pam. What has been the perspective right now on what the LBCA has been seeing in the current, I know you legislatively pay attention to what's going on in Sacramento.
Sure. Well, personally, I've never been this close to politics in my life until I walked into cannabis, and holy shit, hit you right in the face. So, particularly on the governor's bill, We really don't think it's going to work. Like, it's just kind of moving taxes around. It's not really helping us anywhere. It's just taking one tax and like piling it on the other, and potentially like increasing our taxes, which that's just not the right way we're needed to go right now.
Yeah, it's going backwards.
Exactly.
And Craig, you were talking, and I didn't want to interrupt you, but I did want Pam to get into the mix here. But right now you have the bill from Bradford, which seems to me to be the most rational common ground that we can find up in Sacramento. I was shocked to see the language of it. Whether or not it can pass and move forward and be signed by the governor, though, I mean, what do you think about what Gavin Newsom is proposing? He's up for re-election this year.
I think it's ridiculous. It's ridiculous to take away the cultivation tax and then add it onto the excise tax. It's just ridiculous. I mean, I think the problem is the basis of the wave of legalization across the country was the politicians were able to hang their hat on, not that this has been a horrible war on drugs, not that this saves lives, not that there's study after study after study. I hate hearing we need more research. Bullshit. It's just bullshit. We don't. I mean, it'd be nice to actually, I guess, do more research. That's not, that's great. See what more it can do with actual, scientific research, which has been done I think in Israel and other countries anyways already. It's a dumb conversation that the politicians can't get over themselves. And that's the problem. Everybody's got to call the representative and say, you better vote for this or I'm voting you out and voting the next wave in. And we need a new set of people up in office that are going to listen to reality, because everything else is non-reality.
And by the way, we talked about this, but local control. So, this just blew my mind. It was the Franchise Tax Board or whoever does tax enforcement when they took down the Jungle Boys for missing a payment during COVID when they couldn't make a cash payment because our industry doesn't have banking services that affords them the ability to wire something, right? In that moment, they said, "Oh, well, we treat you like any other business." I'm all, but we are not any other business.
Right.
Name one other agribusiness in California that pays at harvest. Name one other business in California that can access federal banking in a comfortable way. Name one, industry other than cannabis in all these levels, right? And meaningfully, this tax cut discussion keeps coming up, right? Money grows on trees, and they're gonna, use it. The cannabis industry is outpacing.
I mean, it's ridiculous, because if you want to open, the only thing I can think of the closest, security-wise, would be like a pawn shop. So you open a pawn shop, you're going to need your security, your safe room, your no access limited access areas, all the bells and whistles, but it's not going to cost you $500,000 on a build out like they require you to do in the cannabis space.
And we talk about in Jakki compliance, right? So you mentioned something to me that made total sense. We always talk about cannabis compliance, but you have to comply at that level above and beyond how every other business is complying with traditional California employment law, right?
Exactly. Yeah, exactly.
Did you turn your microphone off, maybe?
There you go.
Oh, good.
Yeah, it's exactly that way. You have to go into looking at OSHA, the ADA violations. I used to manage at a different dispensary a few years back, and we actually had ADA violation. And the ADA violations don't come from the government. Most ADA violations come from a person.
Private scumbag attorneys.
Basically. And
ADA, American with Disabilities
and
Act.
it's funny that the lawyer
100%.
knows, because our legal got a hold of their legal, and this particular person had 90 other cases.
Yeah, we've been involved.
Currently going on. And but it was a silly violation. And
they all are.
It was, well, so this one, if you've ever been into a restaurant or a place that has a reception desk where it's tall and then short, the short part is for ADA. It's for people that are in wheelchairs, and it's meant to be kept open. You can't have anything on it, not one clean, clear document, nothing. And so I would always tell my staff, please don't put marketing materials on this desk. Like, this is what it's for. We can't have it there. They would always have it really neatly organized by brand. It would look really nice, but person came in with the camera. That's what we got a violation for. They ended up getting like $10,000 something for it.
Well, we settled those for $3.
Crazy. See, they should have went to them.
The problem is, and it's funny you mention that, because I'm counseling all my clients. as general counsel, we don't, we specialize in cannabis, but I don't specialize in employment law, labor law, wage and hour law, FMLA leave, and all that.
Yes.
That's a whole,
All
they're
of
all
that.
different areas of the law. And we're like, and we're seeing it already. The same lawsuits that people get hit up with by unscrupulous lawyers, because in labor law, wage hour law, it is almost next to impossible for an employer not to have a violation somewhere in the books.
So from that perspective, we're not like any other industry, right? And that's why the political side of this, it's as unfortunate.
Well, no,
as it is.
but the point is, we aren't like every other industry.
Because we have to deal with this is what I'm
Right.
getting.
Plus, now we have all this other stuff to worry about. Back in the day, you didn't have those problems. Back in the day, you could do $1 million, $500,000 deal with the distributor coming to your house, bringing over pounds of turkey bags, and shook hands, and you were good. So, I mean, pot and politics don't mix, and they shouldn't. It should just be a natural,
free market.
free market. That's
Right.
what I say.
And so, Pam, one of the things that we're going to get into, and I'm going to talk to Jakki about here in a second, because Huntington Beach is one of the few cities that's actually putting a tax on the ballot, right, in June. But the city of Long Beach, it seems like the LBCA and the forces of the industry in the city have really been able to educate them on the realities of why tax reform is going to be meaningful to business health and also business, tax receipts for the city. Would you touch on that a little bit? Because I think it's also something to inspire people towards there are solutions ahead.
Yeah, you're talking about the 2019 tax reducing like on the supply chain?
Exactly, right?
6 to 1. That was educating, really like talking to our electeds and like being adamant about it and really like talking as a one voice. And really talking to them and educating them about the supply chain and like, do this and like, we will increase the tax base basically. We're saying if you do this, we'll have more businesses will open, we'll be able to open, they won't be running away from the city. And then that'll increase your workforce. It increases people living there, so you'll get extra, property tax.
The ripple effect and the economic stimulus and benefit.
I was talking to Jakki earlier. I'm like, I don't even know what the name of that tax is because I'm not well versed in that. But it's like compounding taxes of people living there and doing industry. Yes. So doing that, they did a study, their own study. They passed it, of course, but then they also did, their follow-up study. So they realized that that happened. We created a bigger workforce. We created a bigger tax base for them. We pulled in millions of dollars more for them by doing that. And by looking at that data, because now it's been, a couple years and they could look at that, other cities are actually taking that on because now we have data. And that's one thing about this is that now we have data to like, being in it for a couple years and like seeing things that work and things that absolutely do not work. That's, I think,
I always said the rising tide floating all boats. I don't know. I'm not an economist. I'm not somebody who can do all the analysis and math of it. But it seems to me if we open up local control to the point of where you have the right to have retail operations throughout the state and all the communities, as Craig pointed out, right? And you have a sales tax revenue base. You have now an illicit market hopefully transferring into. And if you reduce the taxes in terms of percentages and stuff, you might see an overwhelming growth in the receipts to the government at that level. And Craig, to your point, I don't know if we're ever going to be able to get away with a true libertarian free market presence and all this. But the one thing is that you've mentioned this confusion at the state and municipal level. And as all of you know, you're in a vertical integrated operator with multiple municipal locations and county supervisorial. We talk about Huntington Beach, and the only way that these initiatives are seemingly getting done is if there's a tax involved, right, at the municipal level. So it compounds. So, has OC NORML taken a position on whether or not to support the tax in Huntington Beach, which was put by the city? But I hear there's a citizen initiative, and the city, if it passes, may be careful what you ask for. They may actually put something on the ballot if they get the tax vote.
Well, anytime you think about talking to the government, especially when it's local government, you have to go at it smart. So what Orange County NORML does mainly is we individually will talk to all of the councils. We want to make sure that whatever passes is for the consumer. Orange County NORML is a consumer-based nonprofit, So our main focus is to make sure that the consumer, the patients, the veterans, the people that have senior citizens that have built this kind of industry, that they're not forgotten. So when these laws pass and the ordinances are read, we're mainly going in there focusing on how low can the taxes go? Because realistically, what can those people, our people, us, afford? And just like what Craig was saying, none. We shouldn't really have to pay that many extra taxes. So if we can meet low, go low as we can go, that's great. And we always want to pitch that. We want to show them why and who they have to think about. So when they're setting taxes, they usually separated adult use and then medical. So if they're going to set an adult use tax at some level and they're not going to budge, then we'll back and we'll say, guess what? Lower the medical. And if we can at least compromise on that, then that's something. But again, it takes a lot of effort, and everybody can do this. You can all research it, see who you can call. You can go right on whatever city you live in and talk to your representatives. See what they feel about these laws. These are the people, if you just tuned in to one council meeting, wherever you live, it is better than any kind of TV you're gonna watch. There is so much drama that goes on. I mean, you can't even make this stuff up. I'm from Anaheim, so if anybody knows what's going on right there, right now, just saying, okay? Tune into your city, because when you see these people, they're regular people that are council, and these are the ones that are controlling your laws. These are the ones that are controlling our laws. And so the very simple things that we like to enjoy, like cannabis, can be fun. It could be so much better. It could be back like Prop 215. But we have to get active. We have to really communicate, really educate. Orange County NORML has a program that we're really head spearing out this year, which is fostering awareness through cannabis education services. And it's going to go into communities like Huntington Beach, regardless of what ordinance they pass, regardless of how long it's going to take for the community to actually get on terms of what they want to vote for. We're going to educate them. We're going to go get a community center, pass out educational pamphlets. We have so many industry professionals that could be a part of this, where we're just going to educate what the supply chain is, like what Pam was saying. Most people, regular people, don't even know what the supply chain is. What does seed to sale mean? And most people could get this kind of information only in English. A lot of these bills that are written, they're not even translated in different languages. So a lot of what Orange County NORML does is we advocate to make sure that those that do care can actually read it in their own native language. It's really important,
And so, Craig, I don't know how closely you've been following it, but if you were with Sean Kiernan and maybe you were with some of the team that's part of that California Cannabis Reform Initiative movement, they're also really affiliated with the South Bay, with the municipal ordinances there. Do you see the citizen initiative as a better tool than the legislative?
Absolutely.
Collaboration?
I think, unfortunately, just look at the history of politics. Nothing ever really gets done at the end of the day. And that's on stuff that's legal, let alone cannabis. So how long are we going to wait to changing of the guard? And that's what it's going to have to be at the federal level, and even at the state level. It's going to be a changing of the guards. Otherwise, the masses now have to get out the citizen vote and change it, period. We've been preaching this for years, and we can't reach millions of people. It's still not enough to get people to get up and vote.
It's definitely at the local, though.
It's
hard to move a million people, but you can move your city. Like any town you live in, you can get together, start with your cannabis community, and then work outwards. And go talk to your neighbor. Talk to your neighbor, say, hey, do you know about cannabis? I'm your neighbor.
And most of them do.
And the truth is, the state, it's oddly enough, they get the problem about the local access. They do. I know that the Department
that's the killer right now is local access.
Right. The Department of Cannabis Control released a website identifying throughout the state of California, probably to encourage the industry to start, recognizing where this is occurring. All the counties and cities where there are no licenses, and then all the counties and cities where there is at least one, right? So they're addressing it, and they have talked about earmarking $20 million to grant support cities who are moving towards regulatory, right? So I think that's important that we recognize there's some guy. But Newsom hung his legacy as a governor. He said, I know it's going to take work. I know it's going to have to come back. And I keep going back to the idea of, can we survive regulation, right? And if we're going to survive it, I think we have to get behind, progress, right? I agree with you. Sean will tell you very early on. I said, if we could do another ballot initiative, I was saying, let's get it done in 2022. He said, no way. It's going to take a presidential election year and the turnout that we get. But I'm hopeful for that, right? I really am.
I mean, I hope so, because that's our only hope of righting the ship is a citizen initiative that says, oh, this is how we're going to do it. And they have it planned out fairly well. I mean, the bullet points, and this is just a few that I didn't write them down today during the show, but I mean, slashing the excise from 15 to 5, getting rid of the extra city tax that you pay when a business gets licensed in that city. They're either paying a city tax, or wait, we didn't pass a city tax, which has to be passed by the citizens. When you have a tax, we'll do a development agreement. And we'll charge you our 6% on development agreement on your gross. And that's what business gets taxed on their gross profit. Tell me one. I don't think there is one.
And you know, when you go talk to your neighbors that are not in the cannabis industry about our industry, they actually get pissed off and want to support you and like support us, because they're like business people in their whatever their industry is, and they're like, how are you guys even doing anything? So, you know,
People like to
other
smoke
support.
weed.
Exactly.
That's why. And to be honest with
Everybody
you,
who smokes weed needs to come out of the closet and vote.
I've talked about this before.
It'd be a landslide. I read that today in the paper too. I've been saying that for years. It would be a landslide. I mean,
Craig, the Orange County Grand Jury did the investigation on adult use cannabis taxation, right, in the city of Santa Ana, and they talked about, and meaningfully, I'm very proud of this industry and the many license holders of good standing and just great character in the city of Santa Ana. The children's programs in that city have gotten a huge wave of support from the revenues that were generated by adult use cannabis sales in the city. However, is it only potheads that care about kids in our community? Is that what that basically is proving in that moment, right? And why isn't it?
I mean, what's sad is there should be no extra tax. There shouldn't have to be a justification that we need this extra money to do this. It shouldn't be. I mean, with the extra sales and use tax that's already being paid, there should be more money in the coffers for the politicians to do the right thing. But they don't do the right thing, so they want to, blame it on or charge it on the cannabis industry, which is why the outrageous city taxes. So that would go to zero. I think the state would share 1% with the city of the 5. And
of course, the traditional sales tax revenue that is already generated
by
any business.
You're going to have that.
Right? Now, and meaningfully, right, there's a certain point in time where our industry has to recognize that we have paid our dues. And I think Craig's right. Whether or not we're ever going to get it to zero, right, meaningful tax reform has to happen. And like I said, the fact that Bradford's bill made it to at least to the next round, right, in the assembly, that the fact the governor's talking about it is evident, because I don't know if we can survive the weight that's been placed upon us in that regards. But I don't want to just stick to one topic. And, both Jakki, we were talking, you brought it up at the beginning of your comments about labeling. Pam, she just did a high LBC coordinated, I'm a member of the Long Beach Collective Association, by the way, and we talked about THC potency and the myth behind that, right? I'm a 20% smoker all day long. Right. Some people do need a higher level in labeling and stuff. And like, for instance, I use a 1-to-1 CBD pen, right? Like kind of high. And I'm a big fan of its balance for me, right? You know what I mean? But when it comes to labeling and what's in these products and stuff, is there a change happening there? Because this is an industry audience, so we'd like to know what's going on there.
Well, branding matters, so everybody really is trying to catch your eye. That's the first thing. I don't know if you guys get confused, but most people when they're going into a dispensary, the biggest problem is packaging, because it is too distracting. So unless you have a salesperson that's actually pointing you out individual products, it's impossible for you to really soak it all in. You're really just going to go with what you know, go with what you like, what you've tried before, unless somebody pitches you a new thing. When it comes to what you put on your labels, that's changing. So a lot of the THC percentage, they're still on that hype. Unless people are educated, they don't know any better, and you can't convince them otherwise. And that's just it. And unfortunately, with the training of the staff, and the staff turnover is really bad in the retail industry. It's really hard to maintain staff. It's a the highest turnover rate. It's like a 60% turnover rate.
But you said specifically that there's a piece, has it been enacted yet, or there's a legislative agenda right now to actually put the warning labels?
Modify
and things on?
and the warning labels are already intense. It's insane what you have to comply
ridiculous.
with. And then so now what they
Where are
want
they
to
going
do.
to put this labels? Like,
Well,
where are they going to
Well,
put
some
it?
can be on the inside, some have to be on the outside. Then you can have an
specifically
insert
says it has to take up the front
and kill a forest
and
with that
they
insert.
want the warnings to be 75% of the front. So when we were going in, we went to lobby day with Orange County NORML. Lobby day is when you go and you lobby about these bills that are on representatives' desks, and you get to talk to state representatives, you get to talk to all your local people, you find out what district you're in, you talk to that particular person about bills. And there was like 30 cannabis bills that are currently on the desks. So we're going in there and we're pitching it to them, and I'm in the industry, and I'm like, this is insane. Like, some items are this big. They're as big as a quarter if you're buying a concentrate. Like, where are you going to put this information? How is a company going to survive if they can't even put their logo on their product?
Craig just invented .1257 size font.
Yes. So yeah, but these laws are insane. I mean, they just passed the one in December of last year where all merch has to have the state license on there. You know, you have to have your actual license number. So if you're wearing a Stizzy, if you're wearing a House Party, if you're wearing whatever brand you're repping, if you're wearing that, it has to have a license. And they changed the language so it actually says permanently affixed, which means it has to be, you can't remove it. It can't be a patch, can't be
Like
a sticker.
embroidered.
It has to be embroidered. It has to be, and then it has to be visible to the consumers on the front. So you can't even put it on the back. It's really insane. And some of these things can be still changed. If you can even call the DCC, you can go on dcc.ca.gov.
This is what's being proposed.
And you can actually, this is being proposed. So you can actually like call on it and just be like, I don't think that this is possible. We have to change this. Even the current laws can be still changed for the DCC. And there's a constant number you can just call and always leave a voicemail.
I mean, who?
I complain all the time.
They must be on crack. Who sits around and thinks that, oh no, if someone has a brand, we need to make them embroider their license number? Who sits around and thinks
stigma.
up that?
It's stigma. Okay, let me tell you. My background is public health. I have a master's in public health and community education in particular. And it's really the people in public health that are in working institutions. I never wanted to work in an institution. I knew how to do my work on the outside, and that's why I got my degree. But everybody else that works in an institution, pretty much like 90% of people that have my degree, are super stigmatized. They're very, very stigmatized, and they're almost stigmatized, like sets us back almost like 20 years. So I'm always saying this. We really have to step outside of our bubble because you were like in cannabis all day long. We're talking about cannabis every day to everybody. But when you step out of this and you talk to your neighbors that are not into it, it's a whole different story. And that's where the education really needs to go.
This goes back to the point I was trying to make, and this is an agendized show, and we are, essentially trying to find that common ground, is that we are not like any other industry. We are faced with such handicaps to start the process in the front end of that, right? That being said, we do need to start to educate the positive attributes of what we've contributed, and also people who are unfamiliar with that culture. I think the number is 7 million consumers, approximately somewhere between 7 million consumers of cannabis in California. It's a 40 million roughly state, right? So not everyone consumes cannabis, but anybody who's in business can recognize that taxation without representation is probably the most blatant label you can put on it, because not only are we put under the weight of all these additional levels of compliance, above and beyond the normal business stuff. So it's the truth. And I want to stay here tonight that, for Cannabis Capitol, supporting Senator Bradford's Senate Bill 1281 as it moves forward, supporting meaningful tax reform at whatever level to help in the current juncture. We are big proponents and supporters of the California Cannabis Reform Initiative, and I'll be looking forward to participating, and that's what we're about here. Now, we want to get into one more topic, and I think that this is something that all of us can attest to. We had a conversation that makes me sick. I started to bring my skill set in the public affairs arena to the cannabis industry because I saw a lot of people getting victimized as we moved into the regulatory space. There was a lot of people who didn't understand the complexities of government and big business, and as that started to come down towards an industry that had essentially functioned autonomously and in its own vacuum, right, for many years, it was a disruption and a force. But corruption, in a sense, right? I watched it front row in Adelanto, in the city of Adelanto, which did a great service to its people, of its resident community, brought jobs, economic stimulus, took a lot of really good things and made it happen. But they also got caught up in that green rush mentality and money grows on tree mentality, and you need to pay me because I'm doing you a favor mentality that has persecuted, I think, the industry from becoming what it rightfully deserves to be in this transitionary era. So here we are in this current moment. The city of Anaheim broke open. It was at the level of something far beyond cannabis, even with a land use investigation, but it involved cannabis because there was a victimized population. They were actually, and Craig, maybe I'll have you start on this, but they were actually called the victim by the FBI this time. I think that's progress in a way in of itself. But let's talk a little bit about what all the political intersection and the money and all this stuff and what we need to take away from this as an industry. Do we have a black eye from it? How can we change it? And I know that NORML and LBCA organize people to do so. So Craig, dive in with me for a second here.
I mean, a company that's going to pay $250,000 to the consultant, they're trying to jump the line, I mean, yeah, they can be victimized as well, but people are playing in. We've had clients come to us numerous times saying, someone said if I paid, I saw a couple actual contracts for like $30,000. What? They're promising you what? This just can't.
You can't guarantee anyone in the politics.
You can't.
Right?
No, you can't guarantee anything. And there are people doing that. Or they don't guarantee it. They play the game. They know the rules of. I don't do that kind of work, so I don't know. But they're, whatever the rules are, they try to play by them. But ultimately, you're trying to garner favor with the political, with the council people or whatever it's going to be, and it's the play to pay thing, and it just that's the problem when you got city government involved. When you got city government involved, it was just. All done. It was like, really? And you thought we had crime before? And then we have all these payoffs and bribes and kickbacks and, big corporations being able to come in and eat everything up. And it's...
Which is why a free market with access to a licensed system, right, should be open. It should just, American, businesses have been competing forever. This is a zero monopoly nation, right? So we know that there's going to be
That's the only way the illicit market's going to go away. That's the only way. Because even if you even under Sean's proposal, which is far more better than what we have now, far more, I'd be behind 100%. But even if you get that model where it's one retail per 15,000 people, so, do the math. It's still going to limit the amount of shops that can open and unless the state has a standardized licensing system, which they actually have, and then the city took it, literally copied it, and then you have to spend God knows how much money at the city level, and that's where all the corruption came in. So under Sean's proposal, you get the zoning in place, power, planning, development, getting signed off on permits and all that stuff. Like any other business, that's fine. You get permits signed off, but as far as having to go through the process at the city level to pay off council people so you get your license would be taken away completely.
And Pam, that's a nice point to jump in with you on the idea of the public affairs and the public voice approach and the transparency of an organization, right?
Exactly. So that brings, when you unite, in your city, you can bring that transparency and hold them accountable for. And
votes can be more powerful than money, right?
Yes.
At the end of the day,
exactly.
Because they want the money for getting their votes, right?
Yeah. So if you can, even if you show like we just had we just went to city council we're trying to lower our retail tax because we succeeded on a supply chain. So we're like, okay, now we're ready for retail. You ready? So we went to city council and brought the community there. And, they really look at, when you bring people to city council, they look at one person and they times that one person by 10. So when you bring 30 people there, that's like 300 people to them. And that's like saying something. That's like making a statement. So, we're trying to move, that just how that works as you organize. Like, we're all about organizing and educating. And without that, you have no transparency.
Right, and so Craig, just to let you know, I have had Sean sitting next to the co-founder and current president of the board of the Long Beach Collective Association, and I believe that there's some will to find a way on common ground at some point for this industry to make ways. I think tonight has really been about talking about June 2022 and November 2022 and what's going on at the ballot box and what's going on in the industry. But Pam, I know that Jakki, you also have a very similar experience, right, with organizing folks towards meaningful vote and the power of that, right?
Definitely, yes. And it just was really hard we have a following. We know we're all here together, right? It's easy to gather. It's really difficult to have people turn up and show up to the council meetings to speak on certain ordinances, to speak on the change. Take advantage of the virtual. People can actually tune in and do things virtually. It really is good to get in the ear of these people because they really don't know, they don't understand, and coming from retail, they don't understand the consumer. So I actually went and lobbied years ago with LBCA to change the tax when they did for the processing side. And I remember when I specifically went up representing a dispensary at the time, I said, I'm here to talk about retail. And the council actually said, we're not going to open the retail can of worms. And that's always going to be the mentality. They don't realize that the trickle effect doesn't trickle all the way down to the consumer, and the consumer is not recognizing the price change. So most of the consumers, at least in what I've seen in all my experience, everybody's pissed off. Like, what the hell, 35% tax? Like, how did the price change? You said you're giving me like this major discount of savings, and the taxes make it not make sense. And it's really difficult to explain excise tax to a consumer because there's markup involved, and that's
another weird one they need to get rid of. I don't do math or science. That's why I became a lawyer. But that whole the whole markup rate, it's beyond me why they even have that.
Yeah.
It's because government math never adds up. Never. I've been
It's
sitting
intentional.
in city council doing math. I'm not even a math person. I was an English major. I'm sitting in city council with my calculator. Yeah. I'm like, your math is not right. I'm like, how am I telling you your math isn't right?
Yes, and these are the things that we can change, but it just takes being active, really being interested.
Right. Well, as someone who is an activist, but I think there's got to be plenty of Indians when there's chiefs and organizations and so forth. Jakki, for you, Orange County has grown its presence in the cannabis industry, expanding the licensing programs into Costa Mesa. OC NORML and Candace Hawes were a big part of first legalization wave out of Santa Ana, right? So when there's a statewide initiative out there, you will be there to galvanize Orange County, right? Now, Craig, you're traveling throughout the country, but up and down the state, right?
Well, California's home, so.
You have Cannabis Talk 101, you have the Pop Brothers at Law, you work with a lot of different programming formats. That's one of the reasons I was personally honored to have you here, because I know you were taking the show seriously. And John Bayless, by the way, thank you for everything you do to promote Cannabis Capitol as a network and a destination for the cannabis culture and the whole Cannabis Capitol team. That would be Brian Booty-Trago and Matt Casket and many others. You would be willing to carry that statewide message up and down the state in your appearances. Is that correct?
Absolutely.
Okay, and Pam, in Long Beach, if the collective decides and gets together and can really get behind it, do you think you can organize some voters for a statewide initiative in the Long Beach and LA County area?
Probably.
Amen.
Probably.
So from that perspective, that's what this panel was about tonight, common ground and getting it together. Now, as a host, one of the things I really think for just gratitude for you being here tonight and sharing your thought leadership and hard-won life experience is that I say to everyone, is there one thing we didn't cover tonight that's compelling you right now before we're done with the program? Would you like to just share one quick thought, and then we'll go to Craig and then we'll go to Pam as well? Jakki?
I would just say, echoing on what Pam said, you'd be surprised how many people don't know anything about this industry and don't know anything about the cannabis community, that really still believe maybe what their grandparents told them. There's a lot of old stigmatized thoughts that are still blocking people. So be open, be honest, invite people to come to events like this, pop someone's bubble, and really just kind of be proud of what you consume, what you choose to recreate with. I'm a patient, so I use it as a medicine, and will use every chance I get to talk about why and how I found that as a better remedy than an opiate. And I think that just the more you're honest and the more you're active, the more you get to meet new people and share stories, the community is just bound to get better and grow and change, be what we want it to be, right? Yeah.
So I'll keep this real brief. I'm not an economist, mathematician, but we're talking about 15% excise tax. Let's say we drop it down to 5%. It's not. Isn't it better instead of getting a lot of a little to get a little of a shit ton? Doesn't that make sense? You're gonna have driving more people to get licensed, tested goods. If they can go there and not pay the arm and the leg, that they can go to the unlicensed shop and God knows what they can get, especially if you're buying vape pens and shit. You never know what you can get there. To me, it just makes sense.
I will echo that. One of my board members' favorite line that we always say from 2019 was, 1% of something is better than 6% of nothing.
Thank you.
I love that line.
All right, so, one of the things I should ask, I mentioned, Kinda High is a product that works for me. Do any of you guys work with some brands you talked about? What was the brand that you work?
I represent Mr. Nice Guy, so I would just say, all of our brands. Mellow
Okay, cool.
Vibes has awesome stuff. Go for all of our house parties. We have some amazing house nugs. We always have 30% off at all of our stores, so try to give you the savings. But again, don't kick us for the taxes. We get nothing out of it.
And Craig, what are you smoking on these days?
Well, we got, I got to give a shout out to the kid, Jay Cures at West Coast Cure.
Yeah.
It's always top quality. I'm not sure if you guys cared or not, but it's all across the state, and I'm proud of him for sticking to the game plan, because it is not easy getting product in stores or getting people in stores.
True that. And Pam?
I definitely have a Kinda High in my pocket, 1-to-1. It always calms me down because stage fright is a killer.
For real.
And
functionality at the same time, in the same breath.
I would have to agree with Craig over here. I definitely had a couple of those in the last few days, and those are very tasty.
Cheers.
Very
Hello.
tasty.
Thank you very much.
And I will say this, the reason that we're here at Cannabis Capitol is by the generous participation of our sponsors, right? And this is a professional production. We're focused on the cannabis industry and also the cannabis culture and consumer. But I want to thank, there's a lot of them, so forgive me here, but Galactic Gardens and Laughing Gas and Crown OG and Keith Amara from G4 Live, who just gave out the
Live.
Budtender Awards for excellence in our industry, right? And I want to thank Rove and iSpire and Muhammad's and Lowell Farms. And by the way, I like the Quicks from Lowell Farms. Their Quicks are a big favorite of mine, so shout out to Dominic and the family over there at Lowell Farms. I want to thank you all for joining us here tonight. June 7th is the primary election date here in the state of California. There's not much going on, right? I think Gavin Newsom knows he's going to be running on the Democratic ticket. However, in Huntington Beach, there is a tax initiative on the ballot. Most likely, if it passes, the city of Huntington Beach will be putting up a piece of legislation in support of licensing in that community. So I can say be aware of that, anyone who's living in Huntington Beach. We will be back next week with our regular one-on-one interviews for the Pop Politics Show. But I want to thank our panel once again. Thank you so much for being here. I'm going to ask you all to give us a round of applause as we head out for the night. Thank you very much. Cannabis Capitol signing off.